Imagine being locked away for the crime of being different. Welcome to the nightmare that was mental health care in the 1900s. A world where the cure was often worse than the condition itself. What you're about to hear will disturb you, but these stories need to be told because understanding this dark chapter helps us appreciate how far we've come and reminds us to never go back.
The year is 1910. You've been declared insane, maybe for depression, autism, or perhaps you're a woman who spoke too freely. Your family signs a paper and you disappear behind asylum walls. These weren't hospitals, they were human warehouses. Danvers State Hospital housed over 2,000 patients in a facility designed for 600. Patients slept on floors, in hallways, anywhere space could be found. The stench was overwhelming. Unwashed bodies, human waste, and crude disinfectants. Your day begins at 5 a.m. with jangling keys and slamming doors. Breakfast is bread and thin gruel. Many patients were so malnourished they resembled walking skeletons. Here's something that will chill you. At many institutions, patients were kept naked, not for medical reasons, but because clothes were seen as unnecessary expenses. The treatments were medieval. Doctors believed shocking the system could cure mental illness. Ice baths, lasting hours, lowering body temperature to dangerous levels, spinning chairs, rotating at high speeds until you vomited and lost consciousness. The most terrifying aspect was experimental treatments without consent. You weren't a person with rights, you were a test subject. Insulin shock therapy involved massive insulin doses, sending patients into violent convulsions and comas. Many never woke up. Those who did often suffered permanent brain damage. One nurse described bodies contorting so violently that bones would break. Then came lobotomies. Using an ice pick-like instrument, doctors severed brain connections. The surgery often happened in offices. Without proper sterile conditions, patients were awake, feeling everything. Rosemary Kennedy, JFK's sister, was subjected to this at age 23. She went from mildly intellectually disabled to being unable to speak coherently for the rest of her life. Restraints, chains, leather cuffs, and devices keeping you immobilized for weeks. Who ended up in these places? Many were there for reasons that seem unthinkable today. Women who were too independent, diagnosed with hysteria, immigrants who didn't speak English well, labeled feeble-minded epileptics. Seizure disorders were poorly understood, pregnant unmarried women, seen as morally degenerate. Once you entered, leaving was nearly impossible. Some people spent 50, 60, even 70 years institutionalized for conditions that today might be treated with therapy or medication. The truth emerged in the 1940s through brave journalists. In 1946, Life magazine published Bedlam 1946, photos so disturbing they sparked nationwide outrage. The images showed patients lying naked on floors covered in waste, others chained to radiators, and staff using fire hoses to bathe groups of patients. The death rate at some hospitals was 25% annually. Graveyards held thousands of unmarked graves, nameless patients buried in wooden boxes. The deinstitutionalization movement of the 1960s began closing these hospitals. New medications made community-based treatment possible. But the transition wasn't smooth. Many former patients became homeless. Today's mental health treatment represents a complete transformation. We've replaced restraints with therapy, ice baths with medication, and most importantly, we've begun seeing people with mental illness as human beings deserving dignity. The story of mental patients in the 1900s is one of humanity's darkest chapters, a reminder of what happens when we stop seeing others as fully human. But it's also a story of progress, of how courage, compassion, and scientific advancement can triumph over ignorance and cruelty. As we continue to fight stigma around mental health today, we must remember those who suffered in silence behind asylum walls. Their stories remind us that mental illness is not a moral failing, not something to be ashamed of, and certainly not something that should strip away a person's fundamental human rights. The next time you hear someone using outdated language about mental health, or see someone struggling with their mental well-being being treated poorly, Remember the lessons of the 1900s. We've come too far to go backward. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, please reach out for help. The resources available today, therapy, support groups, crisis hotlines, and compassionate medical care, represent the hard-won progress built on the suffering of those who came before us. What aspects of this history surprised you most? Have you or your family been affected by the legacy of these institutions? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most important and challenging topics.